Hello, this little video will be going over the Type 2 turning. I believe it's your last lathe assignment that you'll be doing for App 7. So, don't have any threads, any grooves or anything like that, but what's different about this part is this area right in here. Okay? It's something you can't do with a normal cutting tool. Now you could possibly program it in with a groove tool. For one thing, that'd be pretty slow, and the finish wouldn't be as good. But what you are going to use to cut that would be a left-handed tool, cutting away from the chuck. Okay, so basically what you're going to have are two G71, G70 can cycles. Okay, so you're going to have two of them. So the first one's going to come in here, and you're going to want to chamfer this edge, coming up, and then at some point you want to come up to that diameter to cut that out, and you're going to cut out. So that'll be your first one. Okay, now your second one is going to cut from here over to here, and then come up, and you want to chamfer this edge also, and then come up. Okay, so that first one shouldn't be that very difficult, or shouldn't be that difficult. It's something you've done a number of times now. And believe it or not, or if you don't know it, that is what they call type 1 roughing. Okay, that's just your normal cutting. And what they mean by type 1 is all your X's are getting larger, all your Z's are getting more negative. Okay, if you ever got that alarm, non-monotonous move in an X or a Z, that's what it's telling you. You have a bad X move, the X's are getting smaller, or maybe the Z's are not getting more negative. So that's type 1 roughing. This is done with what they call type 2 roughing. Type 2 roughing is something when you do something that's not normal. Whether you're cutting away from the chuck, so your Z's are getting more positive, or you're cutting in the X negative direction. And in this case, we're doing both. But that's what they call type 2 roughing. Just kind of get rid of this, and I'm going to jump into the manual. So on page 94, they do go over what the type 2 roughing is. But I'm just going to kind of jump right into it. It's really used the same way as what any other can cycle is used, G71, G70. So you get to your start point, okay? So we're going to get to our start point over here, okay? So notice our start point's at Z.1, X 2.1, okay? So that's our start point. So you call out the G71. Now if you look through this, it's no different than any other G71 or G70 that you've done, okay? So it goes into G00. And now our X, which would be our first X, which looks like it's out here, okay? But notice you have the Z.1 in there, okay? Which is the same Z as where it's at. So it does not move in the Z direction, but this is kind of like the secret code that tells the machine that we can do something odd, or we can do type 2 turning, okay? So like I said, it doesn't move in the Z direction. It just puts the machine in type 2 cutting mode. So no matter where you are at your part, wherever your Z start point is of your can cycle, you just put that same Z move in there and you go from there. Now, this example does not use cutter comp, but if you were to use cutter comp, this is where it would also go in one of these first lines, okay? It's important to understand, though, where your cutter comp is coming from and which one to apply. With that being said, we'll jump into our part. So in our case, we're going to be cutting this way. Okay, so picture yourself standing from behind the tool, or behind the part as the tool is cutting away from you. Now, which way do we want to be? Do you want to be on this side of the line or that side of the line? Obviously, we don't want to be over here because we'll undercut our part. So this is the one you want to use, and so now we're probably going to be using G41. Okay, so you're going to be using G41 cutter comp. So you got this point that you have to figure out here, and you have this point here that you need to figure out, and then also this chamfer move up here, okay? So what I suggest you doing, I still suggest you coming over here to Z.1, X, now remember this would be down to 2, so maybe X 2.15, stay off your part, okay? So this way you can tell if your tool's been measured right, and then before we do our G71, you come over to this point, okay? Let's just call it Z negative 5-point question mark. I'm not sure what it is. So you're going to wrap it over to that point, okay? So we're sitting there. So from here, you're going to do your G71, P, Q, and whatever else you need, okay? And then you're going to have your end line, okay? And what I suggest you to do is turn on your cutter comp. So remember we said G41. You're going to have an M number there, okay? X, I would stay just off your part, okay? So we don't put a tool mark there. And now remember this, we need that Z negative 5 point, whatever that question mark is, okay? So it's not going to move in the Z direction, but it's going to turn on cutter comp, and it's going to put in a type 2 roughing. And then from there, you just give it that point to cut this, and then you cut it over, you come up. Now, remember we have to cancel our cutter comp. So we're going to come up to here. So we're going to have a number of lines. So this point here is going to be X 1.875, Z negative 2 point something, okay, whatever that chamfer is. And now once again, you probably want to ramp off of that. Okay, so I maybe would do X 1.9, Z negative 2.0. I'm sorry, that would go up here. Really botched that up. Your Z would be negative 2.0. And now, because we're off our part, we would have another end line that would match our Q up here. And then you would go X 2.15 with a G40 to cancel your cutter comp after you're off your part. So the other thing you want to keep in mind here, it's usually generally, that kind of sounded weird, but it's generally a good idea to do all your roughing and then come back and do all your finishing, okay? So you should have a roughing cycle, and then it doesn't really matter if you want to do your finish cycle and then your finish cycle. That's usually a good practices when you're doing machining. So it's a challenging part just because it's doing something a little bit different that we normally haven't done. You got to calibrate a tool a little bit different, once again, that we haven't done before, with the exception of your setup exercise. So, but if you have any questions, please come and see me. Otherwise, good luck.